Hello, it's Heather Goodenkoff. Welcome to Side Trips, where I chat with your favorite authors about their passions, pet projects, and favorite pastimes. And I'm so excited today to welcome Julie Maloney. Julie is a former dancer, choreographer, and artistic director of her own modern dance company. She's a poet whose work has been published in many literary journals, and her book of poems, Private Landscape, was published in 2007. And her debut novel, A Matter of Chance, which I loved, was met with critical acclaim. And Julie's here to talk to us about another passion of hers that I'm so excited to learn more about. Welcome, Julie.
Oh, thank you, Heather, so much for inviting me to be here. It's so lovely to see you and to have an opportunity to talk about women reading aloud, which is one of my many passions, but a passion that definitely goes deep. It's incredible to me to think about the journey that Women Reading Aloud has taken, because this started almost 20 years ago. I had this idea about having a community of women writers, and I invited 11 writers to sit around my dining room table. And this was after I've had a long career, as you mentioned, as a dancer and choreographer and artistic director of my own company in New York City. And I completely believe that as artists, we have to balance community and solitude. And that's the struggle that I think many of us deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah, I agree.
And so when I had these wonderful women writers, they were sitting in my dining room table. And as I said, I had no idea that this would grow into an international community. And I think it goes to the value of the power of word of mouth, that it continued to grow and grow. And now, as I said, we are an international community, and I lead retreats in the United States as well as outside the country. And it's just been remarkable to me. We're a 501c3 nonprofit corporation, and we bring in writers, women writers from different parts of the country, and as I said, different parts of the world. And this includes the Czech Republic and Australia, Canada, the south of France, Greece, England. And it's been remarkable to me, but I think it goes to the value of how much we yearn for connection.
I think you're right. That's so important. As artists, writers, and other forms of artistry, we do spend so much time alone. And it gets to be, like you said, it's a lot of solitude and poking our heads out once in a while to see what others have to say, what they're working on, and to hear their inspirations really reinvigorates, I think, the whole process. And so I just love it that, 11 women and how this has grown. And how has it changed? I mean, I know you do international retreats.
Yes.
And where have you been, and where do you see it going in the future?
Well, it's we've been going, for instance, we've been going to Greece for, it would have been 10 years in June. Of course, with the pandemic, we could not go. And but again, it is through word of mouth. And of course, I advertise. But my book of poetry that I had written years ago fell into someone's hands who actually was living in New York City. She was Greek, and sadly, she passed away right before she hired me to go to Greece to lead this international retreat. I do not speak Greek, but right before, she was really ill, and she contacted me, and she said, "I need you to run this entire thing in Greece." And of course, I think as women, we step up and we do what we need to do to support each other, particularly. And so I went to Greece, and I met this marvelous family, and they were so incredibly helpful on the island of Alonissus. So I've been going to Alonissus and bringing in writers. As I said, it would have been 10 years in June. We are planning on going back in 2021.
Good.
Yes. And we write on the Aegean Sea. We stay in this pension that is family owned, and I feel as if they are my second family right now. And I never thought I would be going there for almost 10 years. But to go to the south of France, that again was extraordinary. We stayed in a retreat center. And the way these things happen, Heather, is I think by putting yes out into the universe. And I was in a yoga class, and the yoga instructor, I had known her years ago. And she said, why don't we do a retreat together in the south of France? I know this wonderful place. And I said, okay. And so we ended up, flying to Toulouse, and writers were coming in, and it was extraordinary. And then last year we were in the Czech Republic. And I think having the opportunity to work in different cultures, and I negotiate all of the details. Anyone who knows me knows that I am a detail person. And so having to negotiate in a post-communist country, and I emphasize that because it definitely is a different culture. Mm-hmm. And I found people extraordinarily helpful and very interested in who was this petite woman who was so demanding.
I think that's fabulous. Yeah, we visited the Czech Republic several years ago, my husband and I, and my dad's full-blooded Czech, and all his family comes from there, and so it was so neat. It is an incredible culture, just such a beautiful setting. I mean, there's gorgeous. Just something so reverent about it. I don't know how to explain it, but it is just really a beautiful spot.
We started in Prague, and then we ended up going to the countryside about 2 hours away. And Prague is the most gorgeous city, gorgeous. And again, I think people come, when writers come, to be able to work without distraction. That is key. And to feed off each other's energy, it's extraordinary to see how people respond when feel that they're in a safe, in a very supportive environment.
And I know part of your workshops and retreats is using the Amherst Writers and Artists Method. That's the first I'm hearing of it, and I'm so excited to learn of different approaches. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. The Amherst Writers and Artists Method, I was introduced to, probably almost 20 years ago. I went to the island of Cumbrae off the coast of Glasgow in Scotland. And this was a retreat I just found. I Googled international women's retreats, and I went myself. And it was led by a marvelous poet, Patricia Lee Lewis. And it really has to do with being in a safe environment, exploring new material, and writing to prompts where everything is assumed to be fiction. So that gives so much freedom to a writer, even if she's using first person I, to just assume that everything is fiction and to hush the inner critic. I think if we can hush the inner critic, we can be bold and wild and go into places we never might have imagined. But there is a vulnerability that is easily accessible within this method because there's a safety.
Yes, yeah, and I think that it just says so much about your group and your community that you've built, that there is that safety there, because there's nothing more intimidating and scary for any creative is to put their work out there and yes. for others to see and to know that you're in a safe spot where everybody there wants you to be successful, wants you to do, come up with the best that you can. And that's a real credit to the community that you brought together. Now, with this, with the pandemic, how has the group changed this year? Have you been able to still connect with?
It's been remarkable because actually just this past weekend, I led a writer's retreat online for 2 days. And normally this weekend retreat, we would have been having in New Jersey where I live. And I live about an hour and a half from the ocean. And we would have been having it at B&B where we've been going for 12 years. Mm-hmm. And I've been leading that retreat with the wonderful writer, novelist Jacqueline Sheehan. Yes. And so I really feel always that, I guess I repeat the mantra from Emily Dickinson, I dwell in possibility. And that's been my mantra through this entire pandemic. I dwell in possibility. And I decided, why can't we do this online? And I have to tell you, Heather, it was just incredible, the feedback that's been coming back that I've been receiving. And people felt connected. And the beautiful thing about it is that people came from throughout the United States. They didn't have to fly here, and outside in Canada also. And I've been having people from California getting up, at 6 o'clock in the morning to show up so that they could be here on Zoom. And it worked exquisitely. I feel that there is tremendous opportunity to be more inclusive. And there is opportunity to grow here. I've been leading other workshops and people are coming in from Australia. And I think that's remarkable. And I think it just shows us how we can connect.
Yes. And I know you've given so much of yourself through your work and your support to others. What do you get from women reading aloud? What does it provide to you?
I think there's an ill-conceived perception that as we mature, that our worlds automatically get smaller. And I believe the opposite. I think that as we mature, our world should get larger. Mm-hmm. So this gives me such an opportunity to meet women writers and to work with women writers at every level of their creative process. And it fills me and helps me to continue my personal work as an artist, as a writer. When I listen to other writers, I just feel completely inspired by their stories, their imagination, what propels them. So it fills me up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's wonderful. I mean, you give so much to others, and we get so much from all that you do for us. So it's good to hear that you get something from it as well. And I loved your novel, A Matter of Chance. And New York Times bestselling author Jacqueline Sheehan says, Julie Maloney's debut novel is a remarkable, riveting journey. Clear your schedule for this book because you will not be able to stop reading. And I completely agree. I mean, it was just so beautifully written and heartfelt, and I felt like I was right there at the ocean with you, and it really truly was a beautiful book. But what are you working on now?
Well, thank you, Heather. I just love this whole creative life. Mm-hmm. So moving myself into the next novel is very exciting for me. I just received feedback from my beta readers on this new novel. Right now it's called Chaos in the Cathedral. Mm-hmm. And it actually is written in the voice of a secondary character from my debut novel, Tuba Schwimmer. And Tuba Schwimmer actually was a larger voice in A Matter of Chance. But then the editor said I needed to tone it down. I needed to make her smaller. Mm-hmm. And I really love this character so much. So I think out of a sense of defiance, I wrote her own story.
Oh, perfect. Oh, I loved her character, and I'm excited to read more about her perspective and her history and everything.
And it does take place, actually, it goes back and forth between New York and Germany. And it revolves around stolen art, the renovation and restoration of the stained glass windows at St. Patrick's Cathedral.
Amazing. So tell us, what are you reading these days for fun?
I read everything. I read every genre. I love every genre. I just am finishing up reading Elena Ferrante's newest novel. I devour her work. I love her work. And because I also write poetry, I love poetry. So I've just been reading Joy Harjo's new book of poems. And of course, the Nobel Prize going for literature to Louise Gluck. And I read her. I love Elizabeth Strout. Olive Kitteridge was one of my most favorite books, and an amazing character, I believe. I absolutely love Joyce Carol Oates, and Stephen King.
Mhm.
I think Stephen King is obviously a master, and so I love to read his work. I just read Christina Baker Klein's The Exiles, such a beautifully written book, a gorgeous book. Oh, and Monogamy. I just read Monogamy. I think it's fabulous. Of course, we could go on and
Yes,
on.
well, and you've given us a lot of titles so we can add to our ever-growing to-be-read piles. So, yeah, it's so much fun to talk with you and talk books with you.
Thanks, Heather.
So excited to learn more about women reading aloud. And if there are people out there who are interested in learning more, is there a place they can go to?
Yes, we have a website, and just go to womenreadingaloud.org, or they can go to juliemaloney.net. And you'll see gorgeous pictures from different places in the world where writers have come together, and it's pretty magical.
Well, thank you, Julie. It's always a joy to speak with you.
Thank
We
you.
really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Heather, so much. I love speaking